Hey, I'm Logan Lo, and I am a Pakiti Tersha martial artist that studies Kali.
Hey, I'm Johnny. I am a Kempo Karate black belt. I'm a HEMA practitioner, and most importantly for today, I practice Northern Shaolin Kung Fu, Hung Ga, the Southern style, and Black Tiger Claw from the South.
And today, let's break down the Chinese weapons from Where Winds Meet.
We've got 4 different weapons on tap for you guys today. We're gonna break down the real-world applications, the gameplay funness of them, and decide which one we think is best.
We have the Heng Dao, a bladed weapon. We have an umbrella, which is an umbrella.
Really a weapon?
Yeah, but
you can make it one.
You can make it a weapon. And then we have a flexible weapon, the rope dart. And we have a secret weapon, which you have to stick around until the end to see it.
How about, a rope dart to start? What? Let's see, nice throw there.
Nice.
Making the pierce.
Cool animation.
Yeah, it's not often that I envy goons in video games, but this guy's ability to take those multiple blows to the head and just get right back up, I wish I had that kind of pain tolerance.
Well, Tylenol.
Was that it? Yeah. Okay, all right. I'm more of an ibuprofen man myself, but to each their own.
First impression, I'm impressed at how realistic the rope dart looks like in the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see this person having the weapon just down by their side, trying to launch an attack from a dead stop. While they're waiting, that weight is in motion, which is kind of what you really need to do in real life to make sure you can launch an attack at a second's notice.
And on that point, you'll note that when the person's using it, they're not launching it and then immediately launching something from the opposite angle, stopping the momentum. They're going with momentum. So it's either right, or right, left after it comes around, swinging around. So you're using that momentum. I like that. That's realistic, and we see it in the gameplay here.
The rope dart has a handle. Homeboy's not gonna lose that weapon by accident quite so easily. Plus, look at the drip.
What you don't want is you often see people throwing knives and such, and what happens after you throw a knife? Well, your enemy has a knife. Here, you have retention. As you said, you can just pull it back, theoretically.
There's a nice gameplay touch, and this is getting into more the mechanics behind how the game works. But shout out to Stephen Tung, the martial arts director, and the programming team on this one. You see the hitbox.
Right.
You can see the flashes happening when the game is registering the hits, and you can see that's only happening when the weight is striking the enemy.
Right.
Older tech like original God of War and the like, or movies like Ninja Assassin, anywhere the chain hits as well is like a hitbox. So it's like laser whips that are coming around, which really kind of cool, but
I'd want one.
Not how this weapon works. This one, only where the business end is striking the target are you registering hits. It's a small thing, but props to the team. Classy move where wins meet. Classy move.
Just a tip.
Just the tip. Obviously, it's not perfect. There's limitations of hardware, and it's a game. It needs to be fun. Like you can see, rather than maintaining distance and keeping them in the pocket, our players pushing forward on them. And that's not how, in general, an actual rope dart works. You wouldn't want to press in too close or gain too much distance. You want to keep them right in that sweet spot, that pocket.
The other problem is you don't see it in armies and such because think about it, you can't fight in formation with it. If I'm swinging it and Johnny's next to me, it's just as likely that Johnny's gonna get hit versus the enemy.
Yes, this is a single player weapon only, for sure. Now this one isn't even really a con, it's more like a wish list. It's something that I wish video games could handle, and they can't yet. But you can see that the weapon is taking a uniform flight path even when it's colliding with the enemy. As it makes impact with the enemy, it should be diverting in some chaotic manner. That's another big part of the learning curve of this weapon, is being able to handle the fact that you don't know what its flight path is going to do after impact. This, it's clean, it's smooth, it's predictable. I get it, it's a video game, but maybe someday.
On one of the videos that Johnny and I had done previously, we were talking about swordplay and how ridiculous it is to turn your back onto an enemy. When it comes to a flexible weapon though, there is a time when you do turn your back, and the reason why is exactly as Johnny said. If you actually make impact with it and it bounces, you might have to turn your body to follow that momentum. So it's one of the few instances where you do see people turn their back, and it is a logical reason for it.
Last but not least, this game Where Winds Meet takes place in a high fantasy setting, so you or your enemy wearing some solid pieces of armor absolutely fits into the setting. If I had to face somebody using this and I had the option to wear armor, yeah, I'm going with the armor because I think I could tank it, get inside, and make it your problem.
Johnny, in a real life situation, if I was going against someone with a flexible weapon, the person that's using the rope dart needs to manage the distance. I want to make it so I'm the one managing the distance. I'm going to close it and tank that attack as soon as possible. Maybe take a hit or two, but try to finish off my opponent.
With that in mind, how about we break the rope dart down? Let's talk about distance management with a flexible weapon.
Let's do it.
So when it comes to the idea of distance management, if I can control the distance between myself and my opponent, I can control the fight. That becomes very, very important with flexible weapons. Now, we are very limited by the fact that we are inside in a studio and the fact that neither of us are rope dart experts, just kind of amateurs. However, the concepts still apply. Once I get this guy moving, I could absolutely feed it out and make it bigger, or I could make it smaller so it's more appearable on camera. But this radius that the weapon is spinning in, that's the danger, and my opponent's probably not going to want to get inside that radius. If I am a smart user of this weapon, I'm going to extend that radius so that radius is so big they cannot chop me. Once I get this weapon moving, my job is to keep him in that range. If he wants to move towards me, I want to move away from him so he's still in that damage radius. Now, when we're talking about swords, if Logan here is just doing like a vertical cut, straight up from straight down, good, just like that. Anywhere within that arc is a danger to me, so I'm gonna stand upstage. But the same thing, if he is swinging that arc from up high to down low, I'm in danger. I'm in danger if I'm at the tip of that. I'm in danger if I'm at the base of that. As long as it's sharp, it's a problem for me. That's a pretty wide danger zone for me to be standing at. The rope dart, on the other hand, the only dangerous part is this bit right here. It's much smaller, which means I have to make sure that my opponent stays in the arc of that swinging weight if I'm swinging, not if I am launching it straight ahead. If it's swinging far enough away that he can't reach me with that sword, all right, I am safe until he decides to close the distance or until I decide to make an attack. If he moves closer to me, I have to back away because, again, I've got to keep him in the radius of that swinging weight. If I don't do that, what's going to happen at best, I'm going to make my attack and it's going to pass him by. Rope's going to hit him. Maybe that weight's going to wrap around and smack him from behind, but it's going to tag my opponent with a glancing blow, and I'm going to have a new hole in my stomach. That's a bad trade. I don't want to make that trade. Now, what we saw in the gameplay footage, they started to move in because they knew the collision detection would still be there. But you can see, why would I do that if I want to hit you with the weight? Again, with a weapon like this, keeping this person in the sweet spot is key to victory. All right, now, compared to the rope dart, big difference in intention here. The rope dart, they took a real weapon and tried to gamify it.
Right.
With the umbrella, super wuxia feel, very high fantasy, but like cool. I'll give it that.
Very cool. The thrust, you'll note, is the most powerful attack. And honestly, it makes sense, right? Because the most powerful thing that you have on this is gonna be the tip. Here, if you get struck on the side, this is almost like a cushion. It's not really gonna do a lot. But here, especially if I use double force with two hands.
Like a bayonet.
Exactly. I'm gonna get a lot of power in that. It's surprisingly effective.
We see this historically. I've trained in a martial art called Bartitsu, which is Victorian mixed martial arts, and the use of the umbrella, absolutely part of the canon. And yes, the bayonet thrust is like the best punch you can throw with that.
If you didn't know, Sherlock Holmes studied Bartitsu as well. So one thing I don't like about this is the fact that she's fighting with it predominantly open because it's acting like a parachute, right? So you have two major cons with fighting with it open. Number one, it's acting like a parachute, so it's slowing you down as you fight. Number two, it's so large that it's obstructing both your opponent's vision, but your vision as well.
Now, I will say also, you know, taking historical context, we gotta shout out all of the classic Kung Fu Wuxia films where Wong Fei Hung is using the umbrella. So like, I get why they made the choice they made. Super duper cool. You're floating through the air with the umbrella.
So Johnny, fun fact, when I was in college, this is actually something I learned how to fight with.
The umbrella.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, well, not much has changed.
Yeah, well, that's rude.
Yeah.
It's a little hurtful. In any case, let's talk about how to actually use it in a fight in a realistic context.
That's a good way to make friends.
Now, one cool thing about the gameplay is that they used an umbrella. Now, the number one thing I would say is if you look at this, there are three essential parts to it. There's the tip, the middle, and the end. The middle part is the longest part, and it has the most surface area, but unfortunately, it is the least lethal of it. Why? Because it's essentially like a padded stick. If I hit Johnny here, he's not really gonna feel it.
I am unharmed.
But what I really want is I want the tip. Of course, I could do it kind of like a fencer does it with a single hand and launch it like that. Yes, that's good. But even better, because this is not edged, I can grab hold of it and I can really get double force, bam, and get that in. And after that, I can follow up with the other part that's hard, which is the end. That's how I would use it. Johnny, what about you? How would you use an umbrella?
Now, my exposure to using this as an improvised self-defense tool comes from Bartitsu, Victorian English MMA. Gentleman is being accosted by a tough, probably with a knife, maybe a sap or a garrote. And yes, absolutely, they love and favor the bayonet thrust. Right. Is it lethal? No, but is it gonna hurt? Absolutely, because we're driving with the full power of the legs, concentrating it into a solid point. The center, terrible for use in offense, but quite useful as a defensive tool. If somebody is swinging at me with knife or club, a lot of deflections like that, because like you said, it's soft. I can move a weapon aside quite easily. I might even be able to shove or push like a wrestling tool, but I'm not using it as a percussive instrument. Also, blending some of the European martial arts I've tried, I'm a big fan of this shillelagh style grip because I can bring either point to bear with equal speed. So I've got that bayonet thrust, and I've got things like the hook available to me, and then my pugilism comes into play.
One thing I liked in the gameplay was how the umbrella was used defensively. So after the player opens up the umbrella, she can block here. But note that there's another benefit as well. Not only am I protected against an attack, I'm also protected against my opponent's vision. So he doesn't know if I'm deploying a secondary weapon.
Click at the, oh God.
And finishing the fight that way.
All right, time for the Heng blade.
You know, the Heng looks like a traditional Chinese weapon visually. When you watch classic wuxia films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or Hero, that's exactly the type of weapon that you think of.
And you can see the cross-pollination here between the Heng blade and its influence on the later katana. You have yourself a hand-and-a-half handle. Right. You've got, you know, a single edge, strong backstrap, chisel tip. Biggest difference being katana blade slightly curved, Heng blade perfectly straight. And that reflects their uses here. If you're on foot using something like this, you've got a stronger thrust because you have a straight blade. If you're on horseback, being a samurai, you want something that's got a curve, so you got those drive-by swings.
Absolutely. And you know, in Where Winds Meet, overall, it really does stay true to the pure essence and the classic heritage of Chinese weapons. Go China.
Gameplay pros, what I'm seeing with the Heng blade. Homeboy's got a two-handed draw as his first attack. It's smooth as butter and goes right into a slice. It's not draw and then attack. Points for realism, that's absolutely how you would use a weapon like that. And you can see it's a slicing weapon. He's not trying to chop into it like you would with a battle axe. And as such with his animations, you can see he's doing a lot of drive-by, moving off on oblique angles to be able to place and pull that blade for a beautiful slice.
In terms of the animation and the martial arts ability, we see the consistency across martial arts, right? You're always trying to flank. You never want to fight the guy in front. You're always trying to move to a side and flanking that way. Now, Johnny had talked about the draw. Let's talk about the sheathing. It's actually really cool in the gameplay. You'll note that there's this cool little sheathing animation with the twirl. That is not just for showmanship, but traditionally there's a little spin for a sword, because if you do get blood or something else on it, you want to be able to flick it off before you put it into your sheath so it doesn't rust or get locked into the sheath. Shout out to Stephen Tung for making sure that the gameplay animation looked so realistic. That was really cool.
All right, let's talk downsides. Now, longtime fans of ScenicFights, they already know what I'm gonna say, because it's always accurate, but a sword without a handguard is not a well-designed sword. If you're parrying blows, whether it be from a sword, knife, polearm, you're gonna want something to keep your hand safe.
And you know, a question we get asked all the time is, what's the difference between a sword and a knife? Traditionally, knives don't have handguards and swords do. So
Big
that's
part of it.
That's a big thing.
Here's an instance where if you had a weapon without a handguard, it's not a big deal, and that's when you're fighting animals, like a Witcher. If you're fighting monsters, and they don't have a sword that you need to parry, sure, you can get away without it. Any other time, please give me a handguard.
Absolutely. Actually, let's break down and show you guys exactly why a handguard's important.
Yeah. The reason that it's so important to have some form of hand protection, whether it be a knuckle bow or a crossguard or even something as minimalist as this small discard, is to keep your hands safe. They are a very vulnerable target in a sword fight. What we tend to see across the world, older weapons have less or no hand protection. As time goes on and the art of war refines itself, you see guards starting to develop. Case in point, if I'm making just a very simple downward cut, Logan interposes his blade. Congratulations, he's parried the weapon. But even if he's bringing it to the side of his head, my weapon is still likely to continue its flight path, and you can see he's about to get the old Skywalker special. Goodbye, hands. On the other hand, if Logan makes that same attack to me, I've interposed my blade in a high tierce. If he continues his momentum down, it's guided naturally into my guard. My hands are safe. Plus, I have the added benefit of being able to more easily bind his weapon aside and set myself up for counter strikes. Guards, put them on your swords. All right, so we've seen the umbrella, we've seen the rope dart. Your my favorite right now is that Heng blade. But you know what makes any sword that does not have a handguard better?
Gauntlet.
That's right, Gauntlet. Bro, that's super duper European coded.
It's all we had.
We don't have the proper where winds meet Gauntlet, but I mean, Gauntlet's kind of the same thing. No matter where in history or where in the world you have a Gauntlet from, it does the same stuff. Keeps your hands safe from blows, increases your ability to use your unarmed martial arts for defense, and as attack, your punches become way more deadly when you wrap some steel around it, especially if you can make it pointy.
Yeah, that dude's throwing hands.
The sun fist dropping into the horse stance. Classic wuxia stuff.
Right.
I do like how they emphasized, hey, the rear hand overhand is the punch that sends the guy flying, because facts.
Okay, that's cool.
I like what I see.
Yep.
Definitely there's influences of Western boxing. I'm seeing some trademark moves from my Kung Fu training, both the Northern Shaolin and the Southern Honga styles.
Right.
For our modern audiences, like comparing an offensive gauntlet, whether it be European steel or more of this plate they have in Where Winds Meet, to something like an MMA glove, they're doing mostly the same thing, but with one key difference. You have these MMA gloves on. They're to protect your wrist.
Right.
Number one injury in boxing is those wrist injuries. Here in the gauntlets, Where Winds Meet, you got that first half. They're keeping my hands nice and padded, but everything else is designed to multiply the force and do more damage to the opponent. But let's get practical with it. If you are armed with a gauntlet and your opponent is armed with any kind of weapon, sword, knife, spear, what are the three most important words?
Close that distance.
And now, hey, you smell that? No, man, it's a good smell. Smells like technique breakdown.
Aha!
Let's talk about how to use the gauntlets against a long-range weapon. So in the gameplay footage, we see a player armed with the new gauntlet weapons fighting against an opponent who's armed with a pole arm. This is distance management 101. He wins if he can keep me at bay. I win if I can close the distance. Now, I know these aren't the gauntlets we see in the Hidden Mountain update and Where Winds Meet, but you get the idea, right? Really, the formula for success for me is parry, bind, step in, and close the distance. If a thrust is being launched at me, parry, hit my old school monk's pose, bind, and some southern style kung fu with the bow stance and the uppercut. Classic basic stuff. Believe it or not, I'm better off against somebody with a spear who's gonna be making light thrusts than something with a heavy bludgeon like proper use of the Staff of Wukong. The reason why is if he were to do more of a strike here, yes, I might parry it, but I'm still taking that whole shock through my arm. Unpleasant, even if I do successfully parry it. If I don't successfully parry it, goodbye arms.
Johnny, why don't you tell the audience how you would fight with the gauntlets and another weapon?
Oh, you mean what gauntlets were designed for in the first place? I can talk about that all day. As opposed to something like a boxing glove, an articulated gauntlet like this allows me, perhaps not perfect manual dexterity, but certainly enough to hold a weapon, which is kind of what gauntlets were designed to do in the first place. Keep my hands safe while I am using some other weapon. You hear me go on and on about sword guards, and it's for things like this. If Logan is launching a vertical attack straight down and I misjudge it, hey, I haven't lost my hand and lost the fight. I've got myself a margin of error. Now, ideally, same attack, please. I am making a parry with the weapon. What the gauntlets can also allow me to do, it keeps me a little bit safer with things like trapping and binding his weapon in order to set up a counter strike of my own. To say nothing of the fact that I can hit you with the weapon, I can hit you with the steel of the gauntlet. Lots of options, and options in battle mean victory.
Now, Johnny, why don't you show the audience how you would fight if you didn't even have a weapon, but you only had the gauntlets?
Defending against a lighter slashing blade like the Heng or the katana, I have the advantage of when he launches an attack, I can parry that and not take a lot of shock to my system. The danger is this blade is fast. If he's any kind of good swordsman, he's not gonna let the blade die there. He's gonna follow through or disengage to another line. And I don't wanna be defending the whole time. So I have got to slow that blade down. Stealing from my Southern Tiger style, if I can affect that block, I wanna immediately roll into something like the Fu Jiao, the Tiger Claw. Move that blade aside, open up the path. Now, I don't own this sword. He can easily pull that sword back. I don't mind if he pulls his sword backwards, because guess who's following him home? It's me. Gauntlets from the Hidden Mountain update from Where Winds Meet, kind of a banger weapon option. I mean, in the real world, you can dual wield it with any other kind of weapon you like. Plus, while you're doing that, it makes me better at the thing I love most in the world, punching a guy in the face. What?
Nero, what are you doing?
Toad style.
Yeah, like Kung Fu Hustle. Love that movie.
Is that even in the game?
Actually, yes, there's lots of unarmed fighting styles in Where Winds Meet. Hey, all right, idea bulb. When this video gets 1 million views, ScenicFights is gonna break down the unarmed fighting styles from Where Winds Meet. Start training, boys.
So, which of these 4 weapons is better in real life, and which is better in gaming? You're much more of a gamer than I am.
Okay, all right, yeah, that is a very complicated question, because in real life
Sure.
and in gameplay, they all do very different things.
Absolutely. Well, for the rope dart, that was some really cool animation here. I thought it was great in how it looked. The Hang Dao is more effective in real life. It's what I'm
100%.
used to.
Yes.
I think it's what you're most used to. What would you choose then?
Gotta shout out the umbrella. Absolute points for style. Really cool looking. You can float around.
For me, I like the gauntlet just because it's cool, and I get to still have my weapon in my hand as well.
That's true. And from a practical standpoint, I'm 100% with you, because you get
Right.
the gauntlet plus. Even in the gameplay, I'm probably still going with the gauntlet.
Okay.
I like the idea of me having to close distance, because
Sure.
that speaks to me as a person and as
Right.
a martial arts practitioner. Plus, out of all the gameplay footage I saw, that mean overhand with the rear hand
Sure.
that just launches enemies across the screen. Coolest thing I saw today.
Okay, so it sounds like for both of us, the gauntlet is the winner, yeah?
Yeah, gauntlet all the way.
All
Come
the
on,
way.
Give me some love.
I'm not doing that.
I'm gonna take some
No,
love.
come on, that's just weird.
Gauntlets, baby! Check it out on the update for Where Winds Meet. Hidden Mountain update available now.